Hello friends, now we are going to see about the side of the neck, mainly fascia. So it comprises of boundary and type of fascia, which includes skin, superficial and deep fascia. There are a lot of type of deep fascia, so we see about all the types of deep fascia in this video. First of all, we have to know about the boundary. So, the side of the neck is roughly quadrilateral shape and it is bounded anterior by the anterior median plane and posteriorly by the anterior border of trapezius muscle. Superiorly, it has the border of a line which joins the base of the mandible to the mastoid process and inferiorly it extends up to clavicle. This space, that means this quadrilateral space, which is divided into two parts, that is anterior and posterior triangle by sternocleidomastoid muscle. Now we see about the skin, which is supplied by 2, 3, 4 cervical nerves, and it has two major parts, that is anterolateral part and posterior part. Here the anterolateral part is supplied by anterior primary rami through anterior cutaneous, great auricular and lesser occipital supraclavicular nerves. This posterior part is supplied by dorsal or posterior primary rami. Uh, the first cervical spinal nerve that has no cutaneous supply, whereas the 5, 6, 7, 8 cervical nerve and T1, that is thoracic first nerve, supplies the upper limb through the brachial plexus. Now we are going to see about the superficial fascia. So superficial fascia contains areolar tissue with platysma, and deep to the platysma there are cutaneous nerves, superficial veins, lymph vessel, lymph node and small arteries are present. Now we are going to deep fascia, which condensed to form investing layer, pretracheal, prevertebral fascia, carotid sheath, buccopharyngeal fascia and pharyngobasilar fascia. Now we are going to see about the investing layer, which surrounds the neck like collar and forms the roof of posterior triangle, and it lies deep to the platysma. Now we are going to see about its attachment. Superiorly, external occipital protuberance, superior nuchal line, mastoid process, external acoustic meatus and base of the mandible present. Some important features I have to add in this point is, between the angle of the mandible and the mastoid process, the fascia splits to enclose the parotid gland, which has the superficial lamina which is thick, so called parotid fascia, which attached to the zygomatic arch, and the deep lamina which is thin and attached to the styloid process, mandible and the tympanic plate. So between the styloid process and the angle of the mandible, the deep lamina which thickens to form the stylomandibular ligament, which separates the parotid gland from the submandibular gland. Now we are going to see about the inferior relation, spine of scapula, acromion process, clavicle, manubrium are present. Here the fascia splits to enclose the suprasternal and supraclavicular spaces. Now we see about the posterior relation, that is ligamentum nuchae, then spine of 7 cervical vertebra. Anteriorly, symphysis mentae and hyoid bone are present. Now we are going to see about some important features of this investing layer. Already we see about salivary glands and the spaces. Now we are going to see these in detail. So this investing layer of the deep cervical fascia splits to enclose two muscles, two glands and two spaces. So we already see about two glands, parotid and submandibular, two spaces, suprasternal and supraclavicular. Now we see about the two muscles, that is trapezius and sternocleidomastoid. The suprasternal space are also called as space of Burns, which contains the sternal head of sternocleidomastoid muscle, jugular venous arch, lymph node and the interclavicular ligament. The supraclavicular space, which is traversed by external jugular vein, supraclavicular nerves and the cutaneous vessels, lymphatics and so on. Then we also see about this investing layer, which forms pulleys to bind the tendons of digastric and omohyoid muscles. We already know that the digastric muscle has anterior and posterior belly, and in between they form a pulley. So this investing layer forms a pulleys between these two muscles. And it also forms a roof of anterior and posterior triangles, and it forms stylomandibular ligament and parotidomasseteric fascia. So these are the information about the investing layer. Now we are going to see about the pretracheal fascia, which is appreciated in this image. This is pretracheal fascia. In this image, we clearly see that this fascia encloses the thyroid gland and forms a false capsule. So this is the importance of this fascia. Now we see about the attachment. Superiorly it attached with the hyoid bone, and laterally to the oblique line of thyroid cartilage, and more laterally cricoid cartilage is present. So inferiorly below the thyroid gland, it encloses the inferior thyroid vein, passes behind the brachiocephalic vein and blends with the arch of aorta and fibrous pericardium. Then on either side it forms the front of the carotid sheath and fuse with the deep of sternocleidomastoid fascia. Then the important features of this fascia, we already see it forms a false capsule of thyroid gland. So here the posterior layer of the thyroid capsule thickened to form the ligament of Berry, that is the suspensory ligament for the thyroid gland. Then we also see about this fascia provides a slippery surface for the movement of trachea during swallowing. Now we are going to see about the prevertebral fascia. So prevertebral fascia, it forms the floor of posterior triangle and it presents in front of the prevertebral muscles. So now we are going to see about its attachment and relation. First of all, we appreciate the prevertebral fascia in this image. Here we see prevertebral fascia. This purple line shows the prevertebral fascia. So this is the prevertebral fascia. So now we see about its attachment and relations. Superiorly it attached to the base of the skull and inferiorly it attached with superior mediastinum. Here it splits into anterior and posterior layer. Anterior layer blends with the buccopharyngeal fascia and the posterior layer attached to the anterior longitudinal ligament and to the body of fourth thoracic vertebra. Anteriorly, it is separated from the pharynx and buccopharyngeal fascia by the retropharyngeal space, and it contains loose areolar tissue. Laterally, it is deep to the trapezius and attached to the sternocleidomastoid muscle fascia. Now we see about some important features of this prevertebral fascia is, here the cervical and brachial plexus lie behind the prevertebral fascia. So the fascia is pierced by the four cutaneous branches of cervical plexus. And this fascia provide a fixed base for the movement of pharynx, esophagus and the carotid sheath during movement of the neck and also during swallowing. Now we are going to see about the carotid sheath, which is a condensation of fibroareolar tissue around the main vessels of the neck, and it formed on the anterior aspect by pretracheal fascia and posteriorly by prevertebral fascia. And we see about the contents. It contains common or internal carotid artery, internal jugular vein and the vagus nerve, and it is so thin, and the 9th, 11th, 12th nerve are present in the upper part of the sheath. So these now pierce the sheath at different points. And we see about the relation. Anteriorly, the ansa cervicalis embedded on that wall of the sheath, and posteriorly cervical sympathetic chain present. The sheath is overlapped by the anterior border of the sternocleidomastoid and fused to the layer of deep fascia. Now we see about the buccopharyngeal fascia. This fascia extends from base of the skull to base of the skull till the esophagus, and it covers the superior constrictor muscles externally and extends up to the superficial aspect of the buccinator muscle. Now we are going to see about the pharyngobasilar fascia. This fascia thickens between the upper border of superior constrictor muscle and the base of the skull, and it lies deep to the pharyngeal muscle. So these are the important points about the fascia which present on the neck, especially side of the neck. Thank you.